Hey Ben, what's the best part of snowy Wisconsin March?
Well, you know why? It's because there's more time to game. Welcome to Wisco Dice. Hey, folks, I am your host, the Conesy with the Most, and I am joined today by.
Hey, I'm Suzanne.
Hey, you know what? When it's March in Wisconsin, the weather is pretty crazy. It can go up and down and change from sunny to snowing in the blink of a hat. So, what that ultimately means for us is we get more time inside to play games. And that meant this month we got to play 10 unique, new to us games during the month of March.
Before we get into those games, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and also leave us a comment about what new games you played in March. So, over the last couple months, we've had an influx of crowdfunding games that both Conesy and I have backed.
Yeah, for sure.
In the month of March, we were able to tackle quite a few of these and learn to play them, which was a nice change and a lot of fun for us. A couple of ones that I backed. One of them was Casting Shadows by Unstable Games. You may recognize this publisher as the same publisher who put out the very popular Unstable Unicorns game. This is their first game that they've put out that feels a little bit more like a board game than a strict card game. It is definitely a game of last man standing. You have to play this game with people that know they're going to be attacked, and that is part of the game. You have this tile laid out on a board that you are exploring and collecting resources and spells. You need to build your power and transform your figure, your character, into its shadow form, which is this big, powerful, can battle and has special abilities version of itself. And then you do that, and then you vanquish all your opponents on the board. So Casting Shadows is just this step up from a card game, and it's definitely a fighty player interaction game.
Yeah, I thought this game was very reminiscent for me of games like King of Tokyo or King of New York. It was that same kind of feel as far as game. I want to play it again. I don't know that I got a good enough feel of it to really say, hey, this is better or worse than those other ones. But my initial impression was I'd rather just play King of Tokyo than play this game because it was a little more complicated for what it was trying to do, I think. But we'll see. Like, I want to play it again and see how it goes. Maybe with some other players or different, a few more players at the table too.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun though with building your spells and building this arsenal that you could just demolish people if you needed to. So
I also got demolished and then sweet talked my way into getting second out of 3. So
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the tables can turn very quickly in this game. So that is Casting Shadows by Unstable Games. The second Kickstarter of mine that we backed was Steam Up, A Feast of Dim Sum by Hot Banana Games. This is a game that I had seen and was mildly interested in, and then we went to Gen Con last year, and oh my gosh, I just was blown away with the production of this game, and it just looked like so much fun. It made me smile looking at it, so I had a late back it. It is a select collection board game where you are collecting ingredients and then buying dim sum baskets and placing them on your board to earn points and potentially other special incentives. The board in the middle rotates so that you can try and keep people from getting dim sum that they want, or that get the ones that you need, put them in a better spot for you. So there's player interaction with it. It adds little bits and pieces of the culture role experience of enjoying dim sum is spread out through the rule book, which is really kind of nice. It just adds a little bit more flavor text that way. And what's really cool too is that there are 12 asymmetric animal characters that you can pick from. So the replayability with those just kind of keeps going on and on with this game.
The nice thing with it was the asymmetry between the different player character boards that you had. So you weren't all necessarily rewarded equally for the same types of dim sum. how you triggered or scored points was slightly better or different than other players based on their abilities. So there was a lot of like uniqueness. You had one of the easier to play ones, and I had one of the more complex ones. But there really was. I don't feel like the complexity was really that much different for anybody that was an experienced gamer. It was just really meant that I was a lot more focused on certain types of dim sum versus she had the ability to kind of convert dim sum into being other dim sum if she needed to.
Which you cannot do in the real world, but it was, it's just definitely a fun game.
Her character was just less fussy.
Yes. So that is Steam Up, A Feast of Dim Sum by Hot Banana Games.
So with much challenge, Dave was able to finally get Distilled shipped to backers. I've got to say, I'm absolutely in love with it. So Distilled is the new and first release from Paverson Games, and we've had Dave, who is the designer and owner of Paverson Games, on the podcast a couple of times to talk about Distilled. So you can go ahead and check out the podcast episodes. Will be linked in the description below, where you can find out more about this game. But really, in Distilled, it is a card collection management kind of game. It's very interesting, hard to describe, I think. But ultimately, you've inherited a distillery, and you're going to make it a successful distillery again, making fine spirits. So each player takes on the role of the distiller, and you're collecting cards to either augment your distillery or to be ingredients in the various spirits you're going to make. And then once you collected all these ingredients, you kind of set it up, and then you shuffle up all your ingredients into one big deck, and you take the top card and the bottom card off the deck, because of course we know as a distiller, the first and the last part of that whatever you distilled is toxic. So that can be reused in future batches of alcohol, but you can't serve it, right? It's typically used for things like distilled alcohol and that kind of thing. So then when you take that and you reveal what you had, then you kind of match it up and see what spirit could you make of the available spirits in that game. And you can change up the game by changing up the different available spirits that can be made. Of course, each brewer has a signature spirit that they're trying to make, and there are different brewer characters that you can match up with the different types of spirits that you're trying to make in different games. So there's a lot of change up and flexibility and replayability of this game. And the best part is this game's got one of the best how to plays I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You basically just pass the how to play book around as each player takes their first turn during the first round, and each player's first turn where they read off what the book tells them to do and kind of explains what they're doing to all the other players, so that you just basically understand the game right from there. And then and it scales it right up from 1 to 5 players, so you can really learn to play the game as you're setting it up and playing the game. So instead of having to sit there and teach the game for 20 or 30 minutes before people start playing. So I really like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was a huge bonus. I would love to see more games start doing this. I realize it's a lot of effort to create it, but it made it just so much more enjoyable for all of us that were playing that night. Had never played I guess Conesy had played the game once, but the rest of us had it. So it was just nice to be able to just start playing without having to ask a bunch of questions and sit there through a teach. So
I mean, it was great for me too, because I didn't bother to read the rule book or anything ahead of time. I just knew that I was going to be able to grab this book first taste. You have to grab the first taste book and literally pass it to each player, and then as they take their turns and do things, they'll just tell us what to do. And then everybody got it. Like everybody, you and Shane were both first timers, and you all got it. So it was perfect.
Yes. I will say that this game is fairly simple in the basic mechanics of it, but then what you want to do and the choices you make can get really complex and deep depending on what you want to do. And there's this element of push your luck, which I normally don't care for, but it's fun because you're usually going to always come away with something.
Yeah, it's not the only thing that's absolutely punishing is if you don't distill anything, which I actually did in this game, and that was brutal. Like, I made a major flaw in realizing I thought I had ingredients that I didn't have in my stack, and that's my mistake, and then I couldn't distill and on a round, and that just killed me points wise. So, but yeah, as long as you distill something, you're probably fine.
Yeah,
and if you can distill what you want to, then it's even better, right?
Yeah.
And there's ways you mitigate that risk.
I tried, I think, for 3 rounds because I was convinced I was going to distill a certain spirit, and I just kept not getting it, but I still always distilled something.
Yeah,
and I wasn't too far behind everyone else.
No, the scores, even though I missed distilling something for a round, were relatively close. So that is Distilled from Paverson Games. Next game on the list, as far as Kickstarters that I received, is Maglev Metro from Bezier Games. And Maglev Metro is kind of this tile laying, track building, futuristic, kind of subway mass transit game, is I think the best way I could describe it. And it's been a little bit of a time since we played it, but effectively you got a bunch of robots that you are trying to leverage to initially to start building out routes from the 3 original kind of base stations to where you want them. And when you are able to get your little robots or your passengers from point A to point B to destinations they want to end up at, and you drop them off there, instead of those passengers being dropped off there and sitting on the game board, they actually come back to your player board and start making your actions more efficient. So ultimately, the more passengers you're able to deliver, the more efficient your actions get. And ultimately, that leads to more efficient scoring at the end of the game as well, because all of the scoring is all controlled through your player board as well.
Yeah.
So really interesting game. Wasn't like hyper heavy like to learn. Like we picked it up really quickly, but
right.
It was a lot of fun. I want to get it back to the table, and I want to get it back to the table with like a full player count. That would be. I think that'd be really neat, and I think it would work really well as a nice filler in our game nights.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game to try the one time that we played it so far. It doesn't have a full, here's how to play, learn to play, like Distilled did with their first taste, but it does suggest how the first time you're playing it, how you should set up your player board, which kind of leads you into what you probably should do for your first turn or two.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice to help learn to get started, and it does make sense what they say. The mechanic of having your passengers come back to your player board to increase efficiency of actions later on is somewhat unique, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a good one to try.
It's got a nice set of unique mechanics, but also really works, I think, well in the pickup and delivery genre of games. Mm-hmm. These are not typically pickup and delivery games, or typically not games I am super excited about. And yet, here's a game that I really am excited to get back to the table. Yes. All right, and that is Maglev Metro from Bezier Games.
So we've mentioned before that we have a quite extensive table of opportunity of games that we've had sitting around for a bit and just haven't had a chance to play for one reason or another. This month, I tackled 2 of them as solo games. I wanted to get them off, and they're games I had some time with Conesy out of town that I wanted to play by myself, I guess. So I mean, I tried to get the dog interested, but she just was having nothing of it. So the first game I tackled was Unlock, the mystery adventure, the Tonipals treasure version, and this is by Space Cowboys. For those of you unfamiliar with the Unlock series, these are kind of escape room style games. They're actually replayable because you do not destroy any of the cards, and you can put everything back in order pretty easily when you're done with it. I do like them for that reason, that there is some replayability, so it's not like you're buying something, ripping it apart, and if you fail, you're just out of luck. I somehow managed to finish this without actually completing everything in order, and I'm not really sure how. I did try to work my way backwards, and I don't know how I skipped a whole section, but this one you can, I guess, finish without finding some of the clues somehow. The cool thing about it is that you're going on a pirate-themed treasure hunt, and it's neat trying to work your way through all the maps and all the explorations for it. So,
I generally like the Unlock series. It's probably my favorite of the escape room ones. And this is a genre of games that I really want to like. But about a half an hour into the gameplay, I just get frustrated and lose all attention span for them. Just not these kind of puzzle games, escape room games are just not the way my brain thinks. And
Which
so
is
it
why
just
I
ends
play 'em
up,
alone.
yep, it just ends up being frustration oftentimes. Yeah, you really like them.
I do. I need to, but I want to redo this one with someone else with me to see if I can figure out what I skipped, because that's just really bothering me out there. So anyway, so that was Unlock Mystery Adventures: The Tonipals Treasure by Space Cowboys. The second game that I pulled off our table opportunity that I played solo was part of the Time Stories series or group of games. It was Time Stories Revolution, the Nadal Project. This also is by Space Cowboys. So this one, you are traveling to the year 2099 and are investigating incidents that have been happening at an underwater research station. Some outbreaks, some destruction, and trying to get everything back working, save everyone, and figure out what's going on. I did play this solo, but you could play it up to 4 players, and I think I need to do that the next time I play it, because I did realize about 3/4 of the way through the game that I messed up some rules big time.
Oops.
Oops. And I was not ready to go back through it, so I reset it and everything. But it's definitely a fun little adventure. It kind of feels like a dungeon crawl where you're laying out and you're going through different paths and just trying to see what it appears. I feel it's slightly different than the regular Time Stories, the initial Time Stories games that came out, but it's still fun. So I am gonna try and get you to play that with me soon.
That works. I mean, I've only really ever played the original base Time Stories game that your friends brought over the one time, and I enjoyed that experience. I thought the mission in that was really fun, so I'm very curious to see how this one plays out and see how it's different, or if it's different from the way I remember Time Stories being.
So it is Time Stories Evolution, the Nadal Project by Space Cowboys.
So then we go ahead and get into things that we recently purchased, and one of the things that we recently purchased was Battletech from Catalyst Games. Originally, Battletech was produced by FastFoot Corporation, and I think they still hold the rights to the video games, so like the Mech Warrior games and the Battletech video games that are produced currently today. I think they all say FastFoot Corporation on them, but the miniature rights are actually by Catalyst Games right now, and they're the ones that are making all of those plastic battle mechs and whatnot. So the game plays very much like Battletech plays very much like a board game, which I think is really good for you. And so there's a hex grid map that's on the table that you can change up the map so they have different terrain types and whatnot on it. You don't have to have any 3D terrain or anything like that. And really, Battletech, you can play with anything. You don't need miniatures. Like the kind of basic rules are all online available. Like the classic Battletech stuff is all like, and they say right in the rule book, you could play this with dice or printouts or cardboard standees or models from another company, or you can play them with the actual models that are produced. And a lot of people, obviously because it's plastic now, I think that's really been a big thing for the resurgence of Battletech in general, because this game is old. It's been around for years, and while it's had minor tweaks to the rule sets here and there, it is a old miniature game. So, and it's almost like Battletech Classic's almost more of a simulation game than it is like a full-blown miniature game too, because you really are like the shots to the mech, then you're resolving where the shots hit, and that might, if that shot was critical, that might mean that certain systems are impacted or affected, and it really can get just as in-depth and complex with the mechanics as you want, or if you just get the beginner box, it's relatively light, and you could play Battletech that way too. So very fun. I think I really enjoyed it. You were enjoying having stompy robots moving around the tabletop, I thought.
Yeah, no, this was a fun game. Obviously, with it being a fighting game like this, it's a high player interaction, but you get to kind of program out what you're going to do, like for the fight phase, at the same time. So everyone is going to activate. You don't have to worry about, hey, one of your bots gets killed off before you can activate it and do some cool things with it. So I do like that too.
Oh, yeah, the combat mechanism is by far better than a lot of them that I see in a lot of war games, which is, when things go to shoot, just because my opponent's mech got to activate before I got to activate my mech in that attacking phase, your mech still gets to activate, even if it got destroyed. It still activates when you decide to take the time to activate it, and it activates as if it didn't have any of that damage that it took that round. So whatever it could have done before it took that damage, it can still do. But the thing is, you've programmed it. Like Suzanne said, you at the beginning of the attack phase, you are declaring your targets for each of your mechs secretly, and then as the mechs go to get activated individually, you have to activate whatever you said that mech was doing. So the other problem with that is that if you could have like two mechs decide to gang up and shoot at one enemy mech, and the first mech rolls really well and maybe gets a headshot and blows up that enemy mech. Well, sorry, that other mech still has to shoot at that blown up wreck, because that was what it was going to do and it was programmed to do it. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to the programming thing, but it's really cool to kind of set up and then see how it resolves. I really like that, and it makes it so like in 40K and other similar games that rely a lot on heavy shooting. It's the opponent's turn went first. They rolled their buckets of dice and shot off like 3 of my squads. So now I have like 3 less squads on the table before I even get a turn. That doesn't happen in Battletech at all.
Yes. And you get to buy new dice when you play this game. Well, okay, I get to buy new dice when I play
Any
this game.
excuse for her to get new dice is always a bonus. So that is Battletech from Catalyst Games or Fastfa Corporation, whichever you prefer. Next game on that list of new games that we just recently purchased is FrostPunk from Glass Cannon Games. This is a game that I saw originally come to Kickstarter and decided not to back it, but Misty Mountain Games had a copy of it, and we were sitting there for one of our board game nights, and I think the February board game night, and I was drooling over it, going, I've heard lots of good stuff about this game, and I really want to buy this game, and yes, I know it's a bit expensive, but we got the game mat and the base game, and we got it to the table pretty much right away. I was super excited to get it to the table. And it's a cooperative game where it's based on the video games. It's a cooperative game where you're all taking on different roles, trying to get this community of survivors of the apocalypse to survive this like ultra cold winter that is basically taken over everywhere. So there might be survivors outside of your little civilization, but in the center of your board you have like this big heat generator, which is basically what's keeping everybody alive. And you have to like go on scouting missions and try to find food and various other raw materials and whatnot, so that you can build some extra structures and try to keep your people alive. And the whole time, like, bad stuff is happening. People are getting sick. It's just constantly this like, how much do we push it on getting sick or going without heat or this or that before one or two things, and it was going pretty well for us. We had a 4-player game. It was going pretty well, and then all of a sudden it just went boop and went out of control. And I think in hindsight, I think we could see a couple of the reasons why it probably tipped as quickly as it did, but and we were probably risking some things for a first play. It's definitely a game that I think we're going to need to play a couple more times before we maybe get our first win on it, because it is a very challenging cooperative game.
Yeah, and in this game, you do have to make some decisions that you most likely would need to be making if this apocalyptic event kind of happened, with
ethically questionable decisions too.
And you always have 2 options when you choose them, but there's positives and negatives to both of them, and you have to make it the decision, and then you have to live with it through the game. So you need to be aware that that's going to happen when you're playing it.
A good example is I think there was like the child labor versus the child's
like a
shelters
child,
or something like that. So you could pass a law that would make child shelters, which mean you could give you access to building these structures that you could put kids in,
and they would be safe,
and you could put more kids in that one building
anywhere else.
than you could stuff into other buildings, or you could pass child labor and take your children meeples and use them for more action. So like you had to like kind of weigh, if I'm going to pass this law, do I want to make child labor or do I make child shelters? Child shelters might have been the more ethical decision, maybe, but and then both of them have in-game kind of bonuses and negatives. But yeah, that attractiveness to get to work, kids. Daddy needs extra wood and lumber and gather materials. Go get those sticks out of the tree, out of the forest or whatever. That kind of stuff. There's that real kind of.
And I think there were ones that how you deal with your dead.
Yep.
And so so there's questions like that too.
Mm-hmm. So very, very interesting game.
Yes.
Very, very. I can see where the attractiveness is of the video game itself. I think the board game probably does a very good job of bringing that feel to the table, and I'm looking forward to getting that to the table again. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think it's a game that it just plays too long. And there's a lot of little intricacies and complexity that you need to kind of book this as a separate game. It's gonna take you probably 3 or 4 hours to get through a game. And that's FrostPunk by Glass Cannon Games. Of course, then we also picked up Terracotta Army from Board and Dice, and this is a game that you actually snagged off, I think, Miniature Market?
Miniature Market with my birthday discount.
Yep. This is a game we had looked at Gen Con and decided kind of to pass up picking up at Gen Con. We did actually hit the Board and Dice booth early on Thursday when there were still lots of copies, and you were very curious about it, and then just weren't taken really well with the look of the game or the quality of materials. But with that birthday discount, we finally decided to pick it up because it was a really good price, and I think it was a really fun game. It's you're really collecting the various resources of clay and other materials, and you're basically making the terracotta army that's going to be, ultimately where the emperor is going to get buried and whatever during the game, as the course of the game. And you're trying to be the faction that has basically supplied the most little terracotta soldiers to whatever burial tomb or whatever. And the whole course of the game was really fun, enjoyable gameplay. I really did enjoy this one. Another game that I think we're gonna be able to get into on a game night here soon, to bring it up to 4 players and play it with a full player count. But I really enjoyed it. It was much better. I mean, I would say the component quality was questionable. Like, yes, it was cool to have like the terracotta soldiers, but there's a lot of limpy plastic bent spears and swords that are not like. I remember looking at the game at Gen Con and thinking, wow, those little terracotta soldiers look pretty cool. But they didn't look like they were maybe the most, and I think the Gen Con ones, they were all straight. Everything was straight and whatever. They had purposely made sure that was the demo stuff they were using was the best looking product, right? And what happens is like by the time it goes through distribution and hot, cold, whatever, that plastic really went limpy.
And that was one of the reasons I passed it up at Gen Con, was just the look on the outside. The box art did not match what was inside the box for me. I will say I am voting that Conesy paints ours up a little bit. So, just to help also define and help me at a glance tell the differences between some of these terracotta figures.
A couple of the colors are really close or fairly close to the same colors too, and like limp spears just drive me bonkers. So yes, this is a game that at some point I might very well be a small mountain of a hobby project of like replacing and fixing bent weapons and getting it to really look and have that better table presence. Of course, then I'm probably going to 3D print a bunch of other stuff for it to help increase the table presence for this game. But that is Terracotta Army by Board and Dice.
And so the last new to us game we played in March was a game by Underdog Games called HerStory. And this was a game that was given to us by the publisher. for us to review and help spread the word about during the month of March, which is Women's History Month. So you can check out, I think we've got a blog article up about it, review and a
full review up on the blog.
Yeah, so if you want to hear like a real in-depth review of it. But at HerStory, you are working to put together, and you're a writer, you're working to put together a book about famous women in history. So you need to have 8 chapters completed to trigger endgame, but you need to research these women and then draft the chapters and then finalize them. So there's kind of 3 different actions you can take, and as you go through the game, your completed chapters are giving you special powers that will help you finish the game. It looks really simple at first, but as you're going through it, if you pick the right cards for your chapters and finish them in the right order, you get some pretty powerful combinations for your turn and for your actions. And the components, oh my gosh, the components for this game, we were absolutely blown away with it. You comes with a neoprene mat, is standard in this game. The quality of the bag for research tokens, the organizer in the box, like everything fits in the box. It was just a really nice quality, and we had a surprisingly like fun time playing this game.
Yeah, so, this is definitely not a game I would normally have considered or thought about purchasing for the collection. Wasn't on the radar really at all, but when we heard about it and reached out to the publisher, it was a kind of a no-brainer to get a copy. And when we put it on the table and opened up the box and you took the shrink wrap off, we were just absolutely floored by the quality of the components and then how nice this game presented on the table. Doesn't take up a lot of tabletop real estate. The game is very approachable and easy to learn, but there's so much depth to the game, and it was super fun building these little combos from hey, I'm going to collect this story because that's going to give me a discount, or this character in the story because it's going to give me this discount on being able to on this resource on future ones, and stories that I would complete, and trying to get just the right number of components because you got a bonus if you have the right number of components to complete a story. So it was just this really cool little intricate game, and I think I actually snuck the win in on our play of it, but it was very, like, I was so impressed with how much fun this game was for a game that's all about women's history and has all of this really good research and on each of the cards it has like this really good like background of who these female people were in history and what they did and when they lived and all that. So it's, for an educational game, you normally don't think of it having this much table presence and quality. Oh my goodness, absolutely blown away with it.
And the fun little facts that they had on the back of each card about all the women. They had student advisors, so girls that are school age, they pulled up, did a lot of research. They also had female educators helping with creation of the game, and it just shows through what this team that they established can do to bring a fun, great educational where you're not really realizing how much you're learning game together. So that is HerStory by Underdog Games. So those are the new games that we played in March.
So which one of those games did you enjoy the most?
Oh my gosh. That is a very unfair question to ask me because they were so different, and I don't know that I have a favorite right now.
Well, I would think the way you were chirping about Battletech, that might have been your favorite. Certainly it was the one that I've been most excited about.
It's the one I want to replay again right now. Mm-hmm. But,
FrostPunk would be my other one that I'm really high on.
HerStory was good.
HerStory was really good. There were so many. Distilled, obviously. I loved it. I want to get that to the table. I'll probably get to the table here.
I'm going to say everything except for the 2 games that I played solo that I screwed up on.
That means we had a really good month of games in March. And so for April, we do have a number of games that we want to get to the table. That's going to include modern art, trekking through history, Chaos Order, Ladies of Troyes, Draft Horse, and Scuttleball. If you are excited about any of these games and want to hear what our thoughts are about them, let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to get your feedback because that'll help us make some decisions on which games we prioritize getting to the table for the month of April. Hey there, it's Conesy. Thank you so much for watching. We put out videos weekly here at Wisco Dice. Check out our channel for more great videos and don't forget to subscribe. We also have more great content on our website at wiscodice.com. Of course, we do this all for you, the viewers. So please like the video if you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.